This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Ned Lamont has called himself an outsider when it comes to Connecticut politics, but on Wednesday that'll no longer be the case when he takes the oath to become Connecticut's 89th governor. Today, Where We Live, we get an inside look at how Lamont plans to operate government. Coming up, we'll hear about the main issues the Lamont administration will tackle first, including tolls, recreational marijuana, and the not-so-unimportant job of coming up with a balanced budget by next month. Now, what policy goals do you want your next governor to work on first? You can join us, too. Here's the number, 860-275-7266. As always, find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Now, one of the first big changes Governor-elect Lamont implemented was the creation of a new cabinet position, a chief operating officer, to be exact. Now, why does a state government need a COO? Well, the man Lamont has appointed for the job is in studio with us to explain. Paul Mounts Jr., welcome to Where We Live.
Thank you, Lucy. Happy to be here.
So I mentioned that Mr. Lamont, he often says that he's a political outsider, but unlike the governor-elect, you're not like him. You are a political insider. You've worked for Congressman Larson, Senator Blumenthal, even Governor Malloy. So tell us about this new position. What does it mean to be the COO for the state of Connecticut?
Yeah, well, I'll say first and foremost, I did spend time in the former administration. This now current administration for Malloy as his legislative and policy director. And the one thing that I know I realized during that time is the importance to have an individual or a team that will be able to focus on what is really going on in our agencies, really bringing about success and excellence, really understanding how the agencies can work together and not making decisions in a silo. And so this role, which is a role that has been taken on by many other states, including Rhode Island, our neighbor, and other states like Colorado and Arizona as such, is about ensuring that success through an individual and a team that will bring about those success through metrics, as well as working with the state employees and our managers and our commissioners, which first and foremost who drive those success through our agencies to really lead the change.
Our listeners may be familiar with, when you think of COO, you're thinking of a corporation.
Correct.
So how is that different, a CEO working for-profit and a COO working within state government? Are there differences?
There's similarities and there's differences. So I would say that you said that I'm a political insider. I like to say that I'm a longstanding public servant. And the one thing that I say, I've had a background and understanding of how our agencies work and how change can occur, whether it's through staging, and change doesn't really happen overnight. So I look at my role as someone who has a broad understanding of how you can bring about change and administer the various laws and the initiatives that are being led through the governor's office and the legislature. I look about this role as a means to an appropriate end and a solution. And so while you look at on a corporate level, you have the CEO and a COO set up, really part of a senior staff that gets driven up and then driven down. The COO from a state level really has to be a collaborator, someone who's going to work with all the various constituencies inside an agency, outside the agency, the legislature, to bring about the changes that are appropriate to move the state forward.
So you mentioned the current administration under Governor Malloy. So within his executive branch, you have the staff would be chief of staff.
Correct.
And so the new chief of staff is?
Be Ryan Dracewich under incoming Governor Lamont.
And so the idea of focusing more on organization and collaboration, I mean, who would have traditionally taken that role?
Yeah, traditionally it would be the chief of staff in Governor Malloy's or in previous administrations. The chief of staff has to do a lot. Has to manage not only strategy, long-term thinking, relationships with the legislature and the outside constituencies. This role will allow the chief of staff to be really more of a focus area. My role is really internal in a lot of ways, really focusing on our agencies, focusing on our leadership, focusing on our overall performance, and focusing about staff success. And the one thing that I hope to bring to the role, and it will take time because, like I said, anything that's new, understanding our state financial constraints, you have to utilize your current resources to bring about change. And so in order to do that, it's going to be important to work with all the various parties at hand. And so I see this as not something that's going to be immediately implemented on day one, but something that's going to have a process of starting to move forward on day one.
This is Where We Live. In studio with me is Paul Mounds Jr. He's Governor-elect Ned Lamont's pick for Chief Operating Officer, a COO. This is the first time in the state of Connecticut a COO has been appointed. What's your take on this new position? You can join our conversation, 860-275-7266, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So, Paul, how would you answer to critics who might look at this new government position being created as a sign that Governor-elect Lamont will be growing government and is a waste of resources? How would you respond?
I would say that while this is a new title, it's not a new position in terms of staff growth within the office. We are using an existing staff position for my role. So we understand under the Malloy administration that the size of government in terms of state employees has shrunk. We also understand that for us to move forward as a state, we have to be productive. And in order to be productive, we have to understand where we're going. And to do that, I would say growing government is not a focus, but growing productivity is a focus of this administration. So while this is a new title, it's not a new actual full employee position within the office.
Coming up, we're going to talk more about the COO role within a state government, including how other states have implemented this position. But I wanted to ask you, since you've mentioned a few times now that you're going to be looking at how different agencies can be more productive and how there can be better collaboration between agencies. So there have been some announcements of new commissioners.
Correct.
So these commissioners are going to be reporting to you directly.
Yes, correct.
So tell us about some of the new commissioners and the decision to appoint them.
Yeah. So I say our overall strategy is to identify the best and the brightest that are going to work collaboratively as a team to bring about success for the state as a whole. Not bring about success just for the now, but bring about success in a foundation that will lead for the future. So I will start on the transportation end. We were able to recruit a very productive leader in Joe Giletti, who formerly was the head of Metro North Railroad. He played a major part in doing the turnaround of Metro North Railroad. And for us as a state to be productive, not only in a regional and a nationwide level, we have to have a real focus on our transportation resources. Can we get to New York City from Connecticut in 30 minutes? Can we have the continued growth of going towards Boston? We are in a very competitive position locationally, but transportation-wise, we have to have continual growth, and Joe Giletti would lead that. We also identified leaders within state government that are that have been here leading works. For example, as our new commissioner of Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Katie Dykes, who currently serves as the chairwoman of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. She has been a visionary leader on energy policy for the state of Connecticut and looked at nationally for various roles that she has played. We have been lucky to set up a personnel committee through our transition that has not only identified strong candidates to come to Connecticut, but strong candidates have said that they want to come to Connecticut. So it has really made our process in identifying candidates very fruitful, worthwhile, and sometimes very easy.
We should mention there are several very important agencies that you have not yet named new commissioners. I believe DCF, there is someone that's been nominated. Could you tell us about her?
Yeah, so we are, I know it's been reported, so later today we will be announcing Vanessa Durantes, who's currently a regional administrator at DCF, to take over that role. She will be the first African-American woman to lead that department. She has been a change agent very much within her region, looked at not only as someone who is an adjunct professor at Central Connecticut State University. She has led diversity-related trainings in terms of understanding how to deal with the various communities that is within the constituency that is DCF. We look forward to her really being a continuing change agent within that department. She's I would say, a new commissioner, but someone who's been ready to become a commissioner throughout her tenure.
We also have the Department of Social Services, Department of Public Health, DEMIS, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. I understand, will you be announcing the renomination of present commissioners? What can you tell us about that, Paul?
We will. I would say that coming up soon, we as part of our evaluation process of all of our agencies, some commissioners have current commissioners have stood out to be looked at by Governor-elect Lamont to be renominated for those roles based upon the various successes they've had within the agencies, based upon their vision for the future that's very much in line with the vision of the Governor-elect Lamont and Lieutenant Governor-elect Bysowitz. We look to announce those very soon, but I'll tell you this one thing. We are going to take our time to ensure that we identify the right leaders for the departments and the right leaders that will work cross-agency to bring about the success that we are striving for the state of Connecticut. So we're not going to rush decisions. We're going to take time. We understand we do have some statutory deadlines that we might have to make, but we're going to take our time, and I'm happy that our search committee that will continue that work even after Wednesday.
So you can nominate someone to be the head of a state agency, but it's the state Senate that will confirm?
Yes, so it's the state legislature. It's either we get to choose what chamber we want that individual to go through. It does have to go through a legislative committee process, the executive and legislative nominations process, which is a very strenuous confirmation process, and as it should be. In my former role in the Malloy administration, I led the process of getting all of the commissioners through the confirmation process, as well as judges, and it shouldn't be easy. That's the time for the legislators and the public to ask the questions that they want to know about on how this individual will not only run an agency, but will look out for the constituencies that go through that agency. So I not only expect the process to be strenuous, because it should be, and that's why we pick the best and the brightest to not only go through that process, but to be ready to run the agencies and serve the state of Connecticut. You've
mentioned that you want to make sure that these commissioners are willing to collaborate. How do you make sure they're team players, Paul?
Well, first I'm a former football player and went to Trinity College, played football, and the one thing that I saw our coaches do was picking the right players. You have to pick people that have the right personality, who are willing to work together. It's not about just identifying the best king or queen that can run a specific silo. It's about individuals thinking outside the box and understanding that the issues that they work on not only is reflected within their agency and within their specific budget line item, it's reflected throughout the whole state. So, for example, if there is a particular request for a proposal through a Department of Energy Environmental Protection process to procure energy, how is that going to have an effect on our transportation? How is that going to have an effect on our health? We have to be able to talk through our various silos and break them down to actually bring about those changes. So the one thing that we will be doing is we're going to be internally creating buckets of agencies in terms of where do they fall. Is it Health and Human Services? Is it Economic Growth and Development? Is it dealing with education and educational opportunities? We're going to make sure those commissioners are not only talking to each other, they're working with each other. And that's what the COO's position in our office will look to bring about.
When we think about Connecticut's fiscal challenges ahead, during the campaign, different gubernatorial candidates talked about, do we need all of these state agencies? Mm-hmm. Is that something that the Lamont administration will be examining as the COO, looking at organization? Mm-hmm. Do we need as many commissioners to be leading these particular agencies? Yeah. Should some be consolidated?
Yeah, I would say that's something that will continuously be under review, but I will also say under the Malloy administration, they went through that process in cutting down the amount of agencies and having those agencies brought together. It doesn't mean that the actual issues are put in the back burner. It's just for various efficiencies, you can do that. So I would say we're coming in with a different framework than the Malloy administration, where there has been a lot of those contractions, I would say, of agencies, but not contractions in terms of the focus and importance of the specific issues in which those agencies were focused on. But we will look at all those various issues in the weeks and months ahead. But I feel very confident as we do go in on Wednesday that the size of government is something that we can work with, but it's also a size of government that we will continuously have a review of.
You mentioned Wednesday, that's Inauguration Day. Tell us about that schedule and as somebody that's, again, been raised up through politics, is this an exciting time for you, Paul?
It's always an exciting time. It's I would say as a citizen of Connecticut, with any type of change of power and the start of a new administration is something that we all as a state could be proud of. The change of hands of administrations is not easy. A lot of stuff happening in the background, but when the governor-elect will take the oath of office, he'll have the parade going up from the Armory up to the Capitol. That's something that all of us as a state should be proud of and feel glorious about. I love that day. I'm a person who loved government. I used to watch town council meetings as a child, and I
voluntarily
voluntarily watched town council meetings as a child. So I love this
Poor
process.
soul, no.
Oh, I love this process, and I think I really encourage everyone in the state of Connecticut to really come out on Wednesday and really experience it fully. I think as well the inaugural ball is open to the public. So you could go to the Lamont Transition website and go there and learn more about the day. And we just look forward to it. I know that I'll probably be going crazy dealing with other related issues, making sure commissioners are dealing with the legislature a little bit. But I'm going to have a big smile on my face like I have right now.
This is Where We Live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. In studio with me again is Paul Mounds Jr. He'll become the state of Connecticut's first chief operating officer. After the break, we're going to learn about other states that have COOs, and we're going to take your questions too. Do you think this position will be valuable within state government? 860-275-7266. And what are your thoughts about some issues that will be coming up this new legislative session, also beginning on Wednesday? You can join us too. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. I'm talking with Paul Mounds Jr. today. He's the new Chief Operating Officer for the state of Connecticut. The COO is a new position created by Governor-elect Ned Lamont. What's your take? A good move for the state as it continues to deal with significant challenges ahead? You can join our conversation, 860-275-7266, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. In a few minutes, we'll learn more about the impact seen in other states that also have chief operating officers within government. But I wanted to turn back to Paul to give us an idea of when we talk about your focus on organization and collaboration. How are you going to measure that? How good is the data that state agencies collect on themselves?
I would say the state agencies have good data collected. It's about whether or not that data is in a manner to actually be reviewed appropriately to make decisions. And so we can look at I'll take our health agencies. We have a large array of data on our health side. But is the data actually giving us the right conclusions? Is it actually talking to each other across agencies? Is the data deaggregated in a way so we can make targeted changes? Those are the kind of questions that I will be asking to our various agencies as we look at data. I think the beauty right now in the state is that we can grow off of various elements that have been done in the previous administration. Creation of the new chief data officer, which has put out the first state data plan, really having state agencies now be held to a standard on how they collect data, how they're reviewing data, and how they're releasing data. that data is only going to help us in our ability to make decisions going forward. And so I look to work with the chief data officer, which is an OPM. I look forward to working with our lean coordinator, who has brought about changes in terms of how we do permitting, how we do licensures in our various agencies. I look forward to work with all of them and really create this team environment that will bring about the metrics so we can make the sound decisions in moving the state forward. In addition to that, I look at various issues of metrics is only going to allow us to have a better ability to work together cross-agency. And if you look at, for example, I know in the state of Connecticut and nationwide, we talk about social determinants of health and how you can improve health outcomes from individuals. We all know that your zip code plays a large part on your health outcome, but now let's break that down even further. That means your ability to have sound energy. That's within DEEP and PURA. Your food security, that's within agriculture. Do you have access to transportation? That's the transportation agency. If all those agencies that I just said doesn't have the word health in it, but they all have an effect on the health outcome of an individual, of a family, in the health outcome of the state of Connecticut. They have to talk to each other as they're putting together their various strategies. And that's what I hope that through this world we'll be able to accomplish.
Before we learn more about different states that also have COOs, I'm curious about when we think about how the state has worked to overhaul technology or whether they have been behind the curve, so to speak. When you look at DMV or Department of Social Services, questions where we hear from listeners who are waiting on the phone for hours to get an actual person to answer their question. I'm just curious if that's going to be a priority for the Lamont administration. And in that sense, if government can't do it right, is there room for privatization?
Yes, it is a focus. IT, technological advancements to be able to handle the services within government is a focus. I think one of the things that we are going to start asking the questions is, are the technologies and various agencies that need to talk to each other actually able to do it? As the technologies that we're identifying to handle various state inputs and outputs, are they the right technologies, and will they last the standard of time? The great thing about this governor-elect with his background, he's willing to ask the tough questions, and I'm willing to help drill them down for him to bring about those changes. As it deals with privatization in various elements, I know that previous administration has made those kind of advancements in various ways. We're going to come in and just do a broad review of our various state agencies and our various services. The one thing that I will say is we're going to continuously work with our state employees who care about the state of Connecticut as much as I do and as much as the governor-elect. I'm a product of state employees. My father is a 30-year state employee himself. I can go through most of my family have served and worked in the state, and I know the passion that state employees bring to their roles and bring to the agencies. They have to be a part of the process, not against the process. And so I know one of the first meetings I will be having is with the various representatives of the state employees to really talk about the role of this office and how we all can work together. So I would say to that question on privatization, I can't answer that fully right now because I want to be able to go agency by agency, meet people one by one, and learn about each agency and what's moving forward on an individual level.
This is Where We Live. Again, in studio, Paul Mounts Jr., Governor-elect Ned Lamont's pick for Chief Operating Officer. We wanted to learn more about how other state governments have used a COO. So joining us by phone now is John M. Bernard, Senior Fellow at the Governing Institute and contributor at governing.com, also author of Government That Works, The Results Revolution in the States. John, welcome to our show.
Good morning. How are you, Lucy?
I'm doing well. So tell us, in Connecticut, having a COO is new for the state. I'm curious how many states have these roles and what has been the outcome?
Well, first of all, congratulations, Paul. You're in for a lot of fun.
Thanks, John.
There are, to the best of my knowledge, 8 or 9 with a bunch of people transitioning into the governor's office. That is also transitioning, so the exact count I can't tell you, but it is a very powerful role. It started about the first time I saw it was here. I live in the state of Washington. It was in the state of Oregon. And what is happening is that governors are understanding that there is a chief of staff to run policy and work the politics. And then there's a chief operating officer to make sure that government is delivering results that matter to citizens.
And so with that mindset, are these states seeing, the citizens of these states, do they see this as a good investment or rather just another level of bureaucracy, John?
Well, I don't think most people really understand what's going on in their state government. So the assumption is that if you take a look at government and you ask what is it for, what is it about, and I'd love to hear what Paul thinks about this. When I ask the question to groups of people, what is the measure of success in business? Everybody responds, it's profits. Great. What's the equivalent measure in government? Nervous laughter in the room, then someone will shout out, get reelected. Everybody laughs. And then the conversation moves to, well, government has probably 50 measures that are equivalent to profitability. So it has a broad spectrum of influence on society. Most of those measures, and Paul pointed this out, the data exists, but they're really not managed. They're really like taking a temperature without doing anything about your health.
What's your take, Paul?
Well, like I said, John, I really appreciate your articles and your thoughts on the role of the COO. I will say this. John makes a very fine point. I think the general public has an understanding of government based upon their introduction to government. So if your introduction to government is to go to the DMV and you feel that you're waiting in line too long, you're now going to make a depiction about the full government spectrum as a whole.
Absolutely.
And so the one thing that we have to do in the role in the executive branch is we have to change people's mindsets of what success actually is when it comes to government. It's not a profit base. I think our best profit is service. And so for us to ensure, I think our most valuable metric is, are we serving the people of Connecticut to the highest level and to the best level? And we can do that through the various data and the metrics and the understanding of that, and then be able to actually show the people of Connecticut what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and how we're fixing it. I think accountability is very much different. I know I've telling you, Lucy, if you look at the legislature, they start one day, they end later in the year, and if they pass the bill, they feel that's success. But for the executive branch in the governor's office in our agencies, just the passage of a bill is not success. It's actually are we implementing the law to the highest and best ability to ensure the appropriate service to the people of Connecticut?
John, for the states that have brought on COOs, what kind of backgrounds do they have?
Well, it's interesting because they range from backgrounds that, at least from my observation about Paul, appear to be more political. They grew up in the system. They know it. They understand government. And completely external people who come in as retired executives or, later in their lives who want to do service, provide something meaningful to government. Lucy, can I run down a path for a second?
Sure.
So one of the things that I've had the pleasure of doing in 3 different states is actually getting the cabinet together and deciding and proposing to the governor what they think the right measures are to manage the state. And it's interesting when you get a cabinet in a room. And one state I did it, there were 65 cabinet members. We met 8 times. And for a half day, it was mandatory attendance. And we developed the governor's scorecard. And then those measures were built into routines, quarterly reviews, goal councils by the governor's various goals, exactly what Paul was talking about, which is learning to cross the boundaries to work together. Recidivism, opioid addiction, all of those things don't fall neatly into a department. They actually cross over all the departments. Surprisingly, and I have seen this a couple of times, you get a cabinet together and they have never actually met each other. I mean, literally, people in a cabinet with 35 people all reporting to the governor have never even spoken to each other. They may have been in the same room, but it's so different when they begin to really collaborate.
John Bernard is Senior Fellow at the Governing Institute, also author of Government That Works, The Results Revolution in the States. We're talking with him as we explore this new position within the state of Connecticut, the Chief Operating Officer. That will be a position filled by Paul Mounds Jr., who's in studio with me here on Where We Live. You can join our conversation, 860-275-7266. Someone did call in, Paul, who says that the idea of operating the state like a business is what led former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder to cut costs, leading to Flint water crisis. And this listener says government should not be run like a business. And I'd like to hear your take on that. And I also know that you used to live in Flint.
Yeah. I lived in Flint with my wife was a news journalist in Flint. So I have some comments about that. I don't have a business background. Every role that I ever had was in government. Like I said, it's in service. So I do work for a governor who has a strong business background, but he had the foresight to want to bring someone who had a government background to serve in this role. I think John can agree. There's been various different backgrounds of individuals who have served this role. Many individuals who have, like I said, retired COOs of large Fortune 500 companies, and then others who have background in government. I have the background in government, so I believe in a hybrid approach when it comes to this, and I think that's what we're going to bring about.
John, I think Colorado's COO actually is a lieutenant governor, and I'm curious how common that is versus having a new position come on.
Yeah, it's not very common, usually because a lieutenant governor is a separately elected official, and often they actually compete. The various separately elected officials compete. But Governor Hickenlooper actually appointed the lieutenant governor under his administration. He just stepped down, completing the terms that he had available to him, and so it was a bit of a different relationship. I think that's a great idea if you can create that level of cooperation. That said, if not, what it's all about really is crossing lines and learning to break down the barriers.
Mary's calling from Hartford. Mary, go ahead.
Hi. This is Mary, and it's so excellent to hear you talking about how putting projects together across agencies is a different type of governing than just passing laws and policies. And I'm wondering, could the administration create a crossover pilot projects for the environment to revitalize our ecosystems? Because right now, a lot of times we get, laws passed for policies to conserve the environment, but they're disconnected from municipal and state planning decisions and even the energy and transportation decisions. But what we really need, because of climate change, because of mass extinction, is a refocus on the value of healthy ecosystems throughout the state. And pilot projects like the North Branch of the Park River could make that happen.
Well, Mary, thanks for your call. Again, she was talking about whether this cross-agency collaboration with respect to environment will be a focus within the administration.
Yeah, I will say those are the kind of examples that we will be looking at. Like I said, I was a legislative and policy director before having this role, and you can very easily, through a budget process, just look at the issues based upon what line item it falls in. And I know I utilized the example earlier about health. You can utilize that example for environment issues. One of the biggest issues as it deals with emissions for the state of Connecticut and our nation is actually in the transportation sector. So you can't have a comprehensive energy strategy that has a focus on our energy focus of the state and the environment without actually having a transportation discussion. So if the department is focusing on the comprehensive energy strategy from a siloed level, you're going to miss a whole different factor that actually has an effect on the state. So I think the caller is right in line in what our thinking is in terms of how to best can we get our agencies to work together for collaborative success.
Paul, before we run out of time, I do want to find out a lot of attention again on coming up with metrics and again to see how agencies are working together, if they're being productive. Will this be made available to the public, and what will be the platform?
Yeah, well, we're still in the works on that. We are looking at the various examples from other states, and I know John could definitely talk about that as well. That example that we're looking at is very much is Colorado and Washington State and what they have utilized as part of their dashboard process. I think it's important for us as a state to show the constituents of the state what success looks like, what we need to improve on, and how we're doing it. And the best way to do that is to really have information that is publicly available and see the information that as we see it at the same time. So we are going to be going through a process about how best we can do that for the state of Connecticut with our various resources. And it's an issue that I feel in order for this role to be successful, we have to bring that about.
John, could you talk briefly about how states are looking at metrics and making that public?
Sure. I suggest you look at two things, and Paul's already on track with this. Results Washington is a program that I was actually the external advisor to the governor on in the creation of it. And another program is called the Arizona Management System, which is the state of Arizona. I also served that governor and helped him put his scorecards and process of management together. There are good models out there. My dream is someday a governor will actually publish an annual report to citizens and send a copy to every employee, every citizen through the newspaper or whatever, but be very, very visible about what they're working on, what they want to be held accountable for, and the kind of results they're delivering.
John's calling from Kensington. John, go ahead with your question or comment.
I was going to say that if the state of Connecticut wants to try to act more like a business, the best place to start and put some real resources is in the Department of Motor Vehicle. That's the agency that most regular taxpayers intersect with their state. They may not intersect with other parts of our state government, but that's where everyone comes together. And that's the communal drinking hole, and I think that's the place where you want to try to make your maximum efficiencies work.
Well, thank you, John, for that comment. I have to say I sidestepped the DMV and went to the local AAA, and it was a breeze. Paul?
Yeah, no. I think one of the things that we're definitely going to look at is the individual experience with our state agencies. And I think the caller is right. A lot of our constituents' first, only, and last experience with the state is through agencies like the Department of Motor Vehicles. And we will continuously work on those various issues and concerns going forward. But you are absolutely right, caller. We have to identify what is the user experience with the state of Connecticut and how best we can bring about the necessary changes to move the state forward.
And Paul, let me just add that if you go back in my book, Government That Works, I tell the story of New Mexico, where people showed up in lawn chairs like they were lining up for a concert and set them up outside a DMV office in New Mexico and ended up with police hauling someone away at front page story and a total disaster. So my friends in Connecticut, it couldn't be that bad.
Well, we want to thank John Bernard again for joining us, Senior Fellow at the Governing Institute, contributor at governing.com, and author of the book, Government That Works, The Results Revolution in the States. John, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
Also, Paul Mounds Jr., Governor-elect Ned Lamont's pick for Chief Operating Officer. You've laid the framework down for us, Paul. We're going to hope to have you back and see how it's all going in a few months.
I'll be happy to come back anytime, Lucy. Thank you.
This is Where We Live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Coming up, the new legislative session begins on Wednesday. So what policy changes will the Connecticut General Assembly tackle first? After the break, we're going to get a preview from Hartford Current reporter Daniela Altamari. You can join us, too. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. So we learned that the new COO for the state of Connecticut will be focused on operations, not policy. But what policy issues will the Lamont administration tackle first? And will he have the support of the General Assembly? To tell us more, joining us in studio is Daniela Altamari, State House reporter at the Hartford Current. You can follow her on Twitter at Capitol Watch. Daniela, welcome back to the show.
Hi.
So we've had Governor-elect Lamont on the show a couple of times, but I'm curious about in your interactions with him and from talking with others, what's his style going to be?
Well, his style is going to be very different than Governor Malloy, for sure. He's sort of giving indications that he's going to be very collaborative, bringing in a wide variation of perspectives, lots of different people. That's sort of been his approach all along, and certainly through this transition period. We'll see. Obviously, once he gets into office, things could be different. But that appears to be sort of the way he will lead.
We heard from listeners during the campaign, even on Today's show on social media, that they don't want to see government run like a business. Ned Lamont is a businessman. We just talked to his new COO, a new position. Oftentimes you see that in the corporate world. Is that something that you feel like he's going to continue to try to transform government by putting in some of these business practices?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. His experience in government is really limited. I mean, Governor Malloy was a big city mayor. Certainly John Rowland and Jody Rell were both legislators, and John Rowland in Congress and Jody Rell at the state capitol. Ned Lamont's experience is limited to serving on town boards in Greenwich in the 80s. It was a long time ago. Obviously, very different. So. In some ways, we don't really know. He does come from a business background, so certainly that will shape his worldview.
My favorite line from a current article was, "It's unclear how Lamont's aw shucks demeanor will play with the various factions in the legislature, the state bureaucracy, and a fickle public." So talk us through that a little bit more, Danielle.
Yeah, I mean, again, he is comes across as a sort of a nice guy who wants to, genuinely has the best interest of the state at heart. Again, when you're in the crucible of the governor's office and you've got to make really tough decisions, you're going to anger people. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? You're going to have different relationships than you would as a candidate or as even during this transition period. So who knows? I mean, that's sort of the way he's coming across right now. But, we're facing some very big problems in the state, and we'll see how it all plays out.
So that nice veneer might start to peel after a few months, maybe a first legislative session behind him?
Well, it certainly can be, those times can be tense, and there are a lot of different factions and a lot of different people with a lot of different viewpoints. So.
There's been talk from the progressive side that they want to see the legislature come through with the Big Five this session. Can you briefly tell us what those policy changes would be?
Yeah, so my colleague Chris Keating had a discussion. It's in yesterday's paper with the governor-elect, and he does lay out his support for most of these progressive policies. We're looking at, for instance, an increase in the minimum wage, system of paid family and medical leave, legalizing marijuana, highway tolls. I mean, there's quite a few things that the progressives are seeking, and they, had a very good election cycle in 2016, so they would appear to have some clout. And they certainly have the ear of the governor.
There's also not a lot of new lawmakers, so is it unclear? I guess it is unclear to see how these lawmakers will be voting on certain issues.
Yeah, I mean, the progressives have gotten a lot of attention, and certainly, for instance, in the state Senate, the two of the more moderate members, the two of the three conservative Democrats, did not run for re-election. That would be Paul Doyle and Gail Schlossberg. So, but we also saw, in Greenwich, Alex Bergstein winning a seat. She is not a member of the Progressive Caucus, as far as I know. She has a very different perspective, probably closer to the Paul Doyles and the Gail Schlossbergs of the world. So she's one of those newcomers that doesn't sort of fit into that pigeonhole, progressive pigeonhole.
I'm talking with Daniela Altamari, State House reporter at the Hartford Courant, as we get a preview of the new legislative session, which begins on Wednesday. We know we have a Democratic governor. We have a Democratic majority, even stronger Democratic majority in the General Assembly than in previous years. But that doesn't necessarily mean the governor is going to get everything that he wants. We saw that in the latter years of the Malloy administration, where he was actually kept out of negotiations by Democrats.
Yeah, and there was a very strained relationship, again, even among members of his own party, certainly with the legislature and the governor. Any new governor comes in with a sort of a burst of goodwill. The guy won in November, and I think there's generally a sense that, it's in the best interest of the state to work together. How long that lasts, again, that's the big question. We'll see.
State finances are now projected to be $1.7 billion in the red. Governor-elect Lamont has said he's not going to use the rainy day fund. So what are going to be the big challenges in coming together with this balanced budget, this proposal due in February, Daniela?
Yeah, I mean, his first budget, obviously due in February, will fill in some of those gaps. He is banking on growth in the state's economy. That's something that to some degree is within his control, but also to some degree not in his control. I mean, there's a great story in the New York Times today looking at sort of how he plans to sell Connecticut as a business destination and how he will sort of grow the state's economy. But that's obviously not something he can just wave a magic wand on.
I'm also wanted to ask you quickly, Daniela, how will he work across the aisle? Because the Republicans have been in the minority in the General Assembly for a long time. And he's made these promises that he wants to work with everybody. Is that rhetoric?
Who knows? I mean, it's obviously tough to say right now. But, we did talk with, for instance, Senator Len Fasano, who's the Republican leader in the state Senate. And, he said he had a very long, I think it was an hour and a half meeting with the governor-elect, very long, good discussion. So, again, they appear to be getting off on the right foot. When the metal hits the pedal or whatever that cliche is, we'll see. There's certainly going to be a lot of tough arguments up there this session. Whether that goodwill will last, we don't know. But at least initially, there does seem to be a sort of a dialogue and they're listening to each other. I think Senator Fasano told me, he was impressed that Ned Lamont was listening, and he was saying, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And I think that carried some weight with Senator Fasano after, 8 years of Governor Malloy, who had a very different personal style.
We should mention that Governor-elect Lamont does plan on staying at the governor's mansion. Is that where he'll be living for most of the time?
Yes, at least, through the session, he will be living there. He, made a campaign commercial out of driving his own car to the Capitol. That's not going to fly. The state troopers will drive him. What is it, a mile and a half or whatever, however far it is. It's not very far. But he will be living there.
And where does it stand? Lamont had said he wasn't going to take a salary. Is that something that's going to happen?
Well, it appears to be. I mean, that's within his control. He certainly doesn't need the salary. He's a very well-off individual, probably more so than any governor, perhaps since Lowell Weicker. He has quite a comfortable lifestyle, and I'm sure he, probably doesn't need the government salary.
We should mention, too, before we end, when he was campaigning, lots of groups supported him because they wanted him to back ideas like free community college. Now that he's in office, is he going to have to deliver?
Well, again, there were a lot of promises made, and some of those things can cost a great deal of money. And so given the state's financial outlook, who knows?
We'll have to leave it there. Danielle Altamari, State House reporter at the Hartford Courant. Danielle, thanks again for coming in.
Thank you.
Today's show produced by Scott Breedy. Thanks to Kyone Wolf and Lydia Brown. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Thanks for listening.